All right, so we're going to be working with completing the square, and the main idea here is the fact that we're kind of trying to solve for x. No, we're not kind of. We are. We're trying to solve for x. Let's say if y, our output, was 0. So if you're looking at a graph, that's going to identify 2 points on our graph here and here where y is equal to 0. Now in the past, you've been able to maybe break this down with unfoiling, and you're able to solve for x by taking, let's just say it was 2x. Let's say it worked, 2x minus 3, 2x minus 2, and it doesn't. Let's say that did work, and it doesn't, because, you know, this would be a 6x, and this would be a negative 4x. So that's not going to work. So we're not able to solve for zeros like that. So one method we could use is completing the square. Now, in order to complete the square, one thing you guys need to do to start is actually get your a term or your first term to be equal to 1. So you need a to be equal to 1, which is this right here. And one way I could do that is to divide everything by 2. You can do that because 2 goes into all three of these. Now let's say you ended up with maybe an odd number here, like a 7. I would just make that a 7 over 2. You can complete the square using a fraction. We won't particularly show that now, maybe a little bit in the future there. So if I divide everything by 2, including the 0, that's going to create an equation of x squared minus 8x, minus 4x minus 3. And what I want to do is actually make room on the left side here so I can actually kind of manipulate the numbers to give me a square. So what I want to do is I want to add 3 to both sides. And when you're completing the square, one thing you want to do is kind of leave that space, 4x plus, so I can add a square here. I'm going to want to add a square here. So I've moved the 3 to both sides, and I have 3 here. Now, basically what I'm doing is creating this so that I can end up with x minus a number squared. That's ultimately what I want. Now, what I need to do is find a way to get basically a number here that's going to give me a 4x. So what I'll do is I'll take my middle number of 4, which is my b in this case, and I'm going to do b over 2 squared, which would give me 4 over 2 squared, which would give me 2 squared, or 4. So if I put a 4 here, now what allows us to do this and balance the equation is if we're adding the 4 to the one side, we're going to actually end up adding the 4 to the other. That's what allows us to do this. That's what allows us to manipulate this equation, because we keep its balance by putting a 4 on both sides. Now, if I were to unfoil this here, the x squared minus 4x plus 4, since I've created a square here, I could do x minus 2 squared. So I've just unfoiled this, right? If I did x minus 2 times x minus 2, I would get a positive 4 here, and the 2 negative 2x's. So I'm able to change this x squared to x minus 2 squared here equals 7. Now, as a final step, because I've been able to kind of get x minus 2 as a quantity, I could take a square root from both sides, and I could, getting rid of this 2 here, and I could say x minus 2 is equal to the square root of 7. Now, we like to say plus minus because usually like any square, you know, if I do negative 3 times negative 3, that gives me 9. And 3 times 3 is 9. So that's like why we like to say the square root of 9 is actually plus minus 3. So what I'll do here is I'll add the 2 to both sides, and I'll get x is equal to 2 plus or minus square root of 7. And if you put this into a calculator, you would get a result of x is equal to 4.64 or approximately, or negative 0.64. Now that's what x equals. We've been able to solve for what x equals when y is 0. So that means this here is 4.64, and this point on my y-axis here is negative 0.64. And when you're answering a question like when will a paper airplane land, well, this is the amount of time, let's say, that you would say, because time is a positive in certain sense, you would say 4.64. Although you will see on SAT and other types of standardized testing that they'll ask you when will the plane land, and this will be the form of the answer, and it's not in decimal form. So completing the square is an important step. Now again, this is going to take practice. You're not going to see this, right away, but we will work on it. So this is completing the square, and again, this helps you find your zeros on y-axis.